and she just started crying frantically and begging me to come over. It was already 5:30 p.m., but I live in a low-volume traffic area, so I figured I would stop by and calm my mom down before I met my wife. When I got to my mother's house, she sat on the couch, drinking a glass of wine and watching TV. I was livid. She was so calm, too, not the frantic monster I spoke to on the phone. I started pressing about the emergency and reminded her that this was the night of my wedding anniversary. She said she had some house tasks for me to do, and I believe she was 100% capable of doing them herself. Things like washing the dishes, watering her houseplants, cleaning the gutters, etc. So, it's not emergency material. But she guilted me into doing them, and I texted my wife, letting her know that I was going to be late because I was at my mom's house. She didn't respond to my text. Before I knew it, it was 7:30 p.m. My mom kept trying to put more tasks on me, but I put my foot down and let her know that I needed to get home. When I finally got home to my wife, she wasn't there. I was worried, so I texted and called her many times, but there was no response. I tracked her phone and discovered she was at her parents' house. She finally got back at 11 p.m., and as I greeted her with a glass of champagne, she told me to save it for myself because she wanted a divorce. I was shocked and started breaking down. I asked her why, and she said tonight was the final straw in a long list of things I've always put my mother first. She said that she expected today of all days to be our one time together, but even my mom could intervene on our wedding anniversary. I asked her what I could do and begged her to go to counseling. She is refusing. I asked her if there was someone else. She said that someone else is herself, and it's time for her to start working on herself and stop worrying about me being able to put my mother first. She has since moved into the guest bedroom in our house and hasn't talked to me much this morning. I tried to kiss her on the way to drop off our daughter before work, but she just moved out of my way. Update 1. My wife has officially collected all of her things, and my daughter's things, and moved back in with her parents. I made the dumbest move ever and stayed with my mom for a few days to collect my thoughts. It was dumb on a lot of levels, but I finally saw firsthand the abuse that my wife was receiving because now it was directed entirely at me. She also did some bizarre things, like trying to snuggle me to sleep. I realized how counterintuitive it was for me to be there, so I moved out one morning when she was sleeping and came back to my home. I've officially blocked my mother on everything and invested in a small home security system for my house. She's tried to show up a few times, but I've locked all our gates, and she does not have a key. I also rekeyed the doors in our home, just in case. Update 2. She's decided to send snail mail to my wife and me. The return address was my mother's house, and the handwriting was hers. My wife and I decided to meet to discuss the letters. She and I both received different ones. Not going to go into details of mine because it was mostly come home to mama type crap, but my wife's letter came in a large envelope that was mainly unmarked. There was no postage on it and no evidence of it going through the post office, so she must have dropped it off herself, but the handwriting matched, and she still wrote a return address on it. The letter contained information about how my mom was thinking of pursuing grandparents' rights, but if that's not far enough, she'll have to get creative to spend time with our daughter. Update 3. I've blocked my mom on all communication, and so has my wife. We can also confidently say we've got everything on lock, from my in-laws' house to our pediatricians and my daughter's social security numbers. As for the threat, we are following through with the legal proceedings with a lawyer following my mother's threat, but my wife, daughter, and I are doing okay and just taking it daily, I guess. At the moment, I'm preparing for the worst for my mom. This morning, she attempted to see my wife at work. When my wife's secretary refused, my mother demanded to see her, and it got bad enough that they threatened to call the police. We are documenting everything and also looking into moving too. The space for my mother would be good. I'm worried she will come to my work next, but I have told my boss about the situation, and he's pretty understanding. Update 4. She did something not too long ago that takes the cake. While I was at work, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize, and it got tagged as an external server. We use Outlook, which isn't unusual since sometimes people email and call to ask about our services. Plus, the email's subject line said inquiry. I could see a bit of the body copy asking about our services. Well, to my surprise, this was a bait and switch. I opened the email to see the body copy, but underneath it, there were about 4 pictures of my mother, topless, with a caption under each of them that said, "Where's my sweet boy?" This was an email from my mom. I don't get sick often, but I started shaking and then had to go to the bathroom to throw up. Why on earth she would think this was acceptable is something I'll never figure out, but it began to register to me that she had just sent me a topless photo through my work computer and also through my work's internet. I think this was likely done on purpose to get me in trouble. Anyway, I forwarded the email to our lawyer and blocked the new email address from my work and personal email. I then went to talk to my boss about it. He knows about my mom and her antics, and he said that he received an email from the same address regarding me being unprofessional on site a few days ago. So yeah, I think this is a setup. Thankfully, my boss understands the situation, or, I guess, as understanding as a boss could be, and just deleted the email from my mom and let me get back to work. Update 5. My mom shows up at our home unannounced and screaming, crying for me and saying how she just needs me. She's crying and banging on our front gate, demanding to speak to me. If this were the old me, I would have let her in. And to be honest, I almost did. But the new me decided to call the police. When they came, the police immediately told her to leave our property. It took a few moments, but then she finally left. I don't feel good about this. She's my mom. I feel obligated to speak to her. But she has also been so terrible to me and my wife. Update 6. I had to call for a wellness check on my mother. My mom still hasn't stopped sending us letters, but the biggest change is that she now sends some of them through the post office instead of just dropping them off in our mailbox, and they now also come with her address on the envelope. I don't know why she made this change, but it does make it easier for our lawyer to have verifiable proof that she's sending us this stuff. My wife sends her letter directly to our lawyer. It's always the same BS. How terrible my wife is, how she's a WH-re, how she hopes our daughter doesn't grow up and treat her like how I treat my mom, etc. The only reason I opened my letter was because the envelope was thick, and it looked like there were pieces of fuzz coming out of it. I opened it to find several locks of hair and a letter that boils down to "Look what you did to me." I took this to believe that my mother had some sort of mental break and cut off most of her hair. Some of the hair was short and rough, which my wife believes is undeniably pubic. The letter also had what looked like drops of either red paint or dried blood on the corners. I'm sending all of this to my lawyer, but I immediately called the police to do a wellness check on my mother. I'm not sure if she's going through an actual mental break or just looking to seek attention, but it's better to be safe than sorry. She's still human, and even if she is crazy, I still want her to be safe. I'm pretty sure the only way out of this is if I file a restraining order or if she passes away. I don't see this going away anytime soon. I know it's only been about 3 months since the onset of this, but I don't know if I can go living like this for the rest of my life. I now understand how my wife feels. I think a restraining order is the next step. Update 7. I thought I'd give a quick update on my mother. Without going into too much detail, she drove to our house one evening and had a psychotic break in front of our home that involved self-harm. It was enough for us to call the police, again, and she is now spending time at a mental facility. That's all I'll speak about on that matter.